Italy, known for countless global contributions, inventions, and social milestones. It is a monolith of culture, grace, and love. Leonardo da Vinci, Galileo Galilei, Christopher Columbus, Gianni Versace are just some of the giants of Italian history, stopping at nowhere to vie for the betterment of our outlooks on life. The typewriter, the battery, the violin, eyeglasses, cologne are children of brilliant Italian minds who have driven our world forward and only forward. The San Remo Riviera, the Roman Colosseum, and the Florence Cathedral are breathtaking landmarks with unforgettable histories. Italy is beautiful, but the monster it's created is far from it. Cosa Nostra, or Our Thing, better known as the Mafia, is something Italians, Americans, and everyone in between talk about with caution, and for good reason. Before the Mafia became the covert and dangerous high-rolling neo-terrorists we know them as today, their beginnings were humble enough. In the 19th century, before the island of Sicily became part of the Italian nation, it was highly contested by Greek, Spanish, French, and Roman forces, all dying for the possession of this spice-rich and exotic Mediterranean land. Naturally, as Europeans always do, they blew it out of proportion and began to mistreat the natives of the island. The already existing island criminals began to form families or clans to lay waste to the foreign invaders, as well as to have a hell of a lot of fun doing so. These families evolved into mafias, stemming from the Italian word for bold. And the name is fitting, since these syndicates continued to carry out organized criminal activities such as racketeering, murder, blackmail, and extortion for decades past. Of course, expansion of influence was always on the family's minds. The rise of the newly immigrated American mafia began during the Prohibition era in the 1920s, because there's nothing the mafia loves more than disobeying the law to piss off the authorities. The criminalization of the production, transportation, importation, and exchange of alcohol was the perfect opportunity for the American mafia to establish speakeasies, underground establishments which would covertly provide booze to the locals, while feeding the mafiosos' pockets with cold hard cash. One such crime boss went by the name of Al Capone, one of the most infamous criminals in the world, let alone Chicago. Today, his practices of extortion, tax evasion, racketeering, and the works would set his net worth at $1.3 billion. A brief narrative of the activities and functions surrounding Alfonso Gabriel Capone, written by Guy T. Helverin, an employee of the Bureau of Internal Revenue in the period, reads, quote, Chicago had gained an international reputation from 1924 to 1930 because of organized lawlessness. Gang killings were a frequent occurrence. The most notorious leader of organized crime in that city and in the nation was Al Capone, and termed by the newspapers as public enemy number one of the United States. There is no doubt that he was the most vicious, dangerous racketeer in the history of this country. His reign as vice overlord began in 1924, when he succeeded Johnny Torrio, and continued up to the time of his conviction on the charge of evading income taxes, October 17, 1931. End quote. Through much violence and personal quarrels with other American participants in the crime underworld, his face was tarnished by indelible scars, appropriately bestowing him the renowned nickname Scarface. Then, the Ku Klux Klan rose from the dust of supremacy. The extremist organization's aim was to rekindle the flame of slavery put out by Lincoln in 1865, long before, through illegal enforcement tactics. The violence and disturbance caused by the racist army grew too much for the state authorities to handle. Meanwhile, at this stage in their power, and after many attempts to take action against the clans, the American government recognized the Mafia as an organized crime, and ultimately decided to take advantage of the situation. Fighting fire with fire may not seem like a practical solution in any case, but hiring the Mafia to terrorize and deter the KKK was the only viable option at this point. In 1964, the President of the United States, J. Edgar Hoover, hired a mafioso hitman by the name of Gregory Scarpa to investigate a string of 3 murders concerning civil rights workers, known as the Mississippi Burning case. Scarpa's scare tactics and blackmail drove one of the Klansmen taken in by the FBI to reveal the location of the bodies. This is but one of the many instances in which the American government used the Italian families to purge their streets of malice. But how does this well-oiled criminal machine actually function? The hierarchy in a mafia is unique in the way that the big dogs at the top have more involved control over the pawns at the bottom. The most important individual in a mafia is the boss, or the capo familia. He is in charge of executive decisions just as a CEO of a corporation would be, and is the general overseer of all outgoing criminal operations. He is advised by a consigliere, his right hand. His chief advisor tactically moves the plan forward with his critical thinking and decision-making skills, and is normally a close, trusted friend of the boss. Directly under the boss in the chain of command is, you guessed it, the underboss, also known as the capo bastone. He is essentially the substitute for the boss in the case of either a disease or a hostile takeover, and sends the subordinates on missions for the betterment of the family. The capo regime is below the underboss and acts similarly to a lieutenant. He directly trains, advises, and controls a group of soldiers to carry out tasks like running errands, picking up cash, and making deliveries. The soldiers then make connections with associates through networking. These friends of a friend are usually corrupt police, crooked bankers, money launderers, all that good stuff. The web extends on and on across states, provinces, countries. Next to anyone can become part of the family, so think twice before you insult your neighbor's penne. Vito Corleone, Gregory Scarpa, Donnie Brasco have all their place in the way mafias are portrayed in contemporary media. But we tend to overlook the actual gruesomeness of why these families are the way they are, their roots and their futures. Many gangs in the Western world fade away due to extenuating circumstances, drug busts, and mutiny, but the essence of trust present in the mafia sets it apart from other criminalities. The government's past reliance on the mafia has set a dangerous precedent, and this is why the mafia is stronger. People just don't know who to trust. And trust is a dangerous game to play when it comes to the ones who were criminal guardians of Sicily not so long ago.